Unfortunately, most people take 62 years to learn what I'm about to share here. 62 years of working hard, 62 years of sacrificing, 62 years of doing everything they were told was right, only to realize they had the whole thing backwards. And the worst part? Most of them had the money. They had the opportunities. They just never had this. What you're about to hear isn't taught in schools. It isn't covered in your 401k pamphlet, and your financial advisor probably never mentioned it either. But it is the difference between a life that looks successful and a life that actually feels like it. These are the things most people only figure out when there's very little time left to use them. Here's the first thing most people never figure out early enough. Stop pretending. That's it. 2 words. But the financial cost of ignoring those 2 words is staggering. See, most Americans spend a significant portion of their lives performing a version of themselves that was never really them to begin with. The job title that sounds impressive at dinner parties, the neighborhood that signals you've made it, the car that says you're doing well, even when the loan statement says something completely different. And here's what's brutal about this. It's not just an identity problem, it's a wealth problem. Every dollar spent maintaining a version of yourself that isn't real is a dollar that never makes it to your portfolio, never compounds, never works for you at 3 in the morning while you're asleep. Think about that. A 40-year-old earning $90,000 a year, spending an extra $400 a month just to keep up an image, that's $4,800 a year gone. Not invested, not compounding, just gone. Over 10 years, with even modest compound growth, that's closer to $70,000 that simply evaporated to impress people who weren't paying attention anyway. That's not a small number. That's a retirement account. And the psychological reason this happens is simple. We are wired for social approval. It goes back thousands of years. Being accepted by the group meant survival. But the modern version of that survival instinct is being expressed through lease payments, credit card statements, and houses with square footage nobody actually uses. The financially intelligent Americans, the ones quietly building real wealth, they figured something out early. There's enormous financial freedom in simply being comfortable with who you are. No performance, no image maintenance budget, no keeping score with people who are probably financing everything anyway. When you stop pretending, your expenses drop naturally. Your financial decisions become cleaner. Your capital allocation sharpens because you're no longer spending money to manage perception. You're spending it with actual intention. That shift alone is worth more than any stock tip, any hot investment trend, or any financial hack you'll ever come across. It sounds simple, but almost nobody does it. Now here's the one that gets expensive fast, really fast. And it's probably the single most destructive financial behavior in middle-class America today. Keeping up with the Joneses. Now before you say, "That's not me," just hear this out, because this isn't about buying designer clothes or pulling up to the valet in something ridiculous. This is much more subtle than that. This is your neighbor pulling into the driveway with a brand new SUV, and suddenly your perfectly good car feels embarrassing. This is someone in your social circle moving to a slightly better zip code, and all of a sudden, your neighborhood feels like a step behind. This is the quiet, invisible pressure that makes otherwise intelligent people make genuinely terrible financial decisions. And the math on this is devastating. The average American family, trying to keep pace with lifestyle inflation, spends an extra $500 to $800 a month on things they didn't actually want until someone else had them first. That's $6,000 to $9,600 a year, not going into a 401k, not going into an index fund, not building anything, just bleeding out, slowly, quietly, every single month. Over 20 years, with average compound growth, that number doesn't just double, it transforms into something closer to $300,000 that never existed in your retirement account because of a car you didn't need and a zip code you couldn't afford. $300,000. For what? To feel relevant at a backyard barbecue? And here's the psychology behind it. It's not greed, it's fear. Fear of falling behind. Fear of being perceived as less successful, less capable, less worthy. And that fear is being monetized against you every single day by car manufacturers, by real estate developers, by every industry that profits from you feeling just slightly inadequate. The financially intelligent Americans see this clearly. They understand that lifestyle comparison is just wealth destruction with better marketing. They don't opt out because they're cheap, they opt out because they're paying attention. And the moment you stop letting other people's choices dictate your financial decisions is the moment your wealth building actually begins. So if keeping up with the Joneses is the behavior, here's the belief system underneath it, the idea that stuff will make you happy. And this one's worth slowing down on because it's costing Americans a fortune, not just financially, but in terms of the life they actually wanted to live. Here's what's interesting. Study after study on human happiness points to the same conclusion. Experiences and relationships deliver lasting joy. Possessions deliver a temporary spike followed by complete emotional neutrality. You buy the thing, you feel the rush. 2 weeks later, it's just furniture. It's just another item in a house that's already full of items that all felt important at the moment of purchase. And yet, the average American household carries over $17,000 in credit card debt. A significant chunk of that is stuff. Stuff sitting in closets, stuff in garages that can't fit a car anymore, stuff that got delivered in a cardboard box that felt exciting for about 48 hours and has been invisible ever since. Now flip that around. That same $17,000 invested consistently with compound growth working in your favor over 15 years becomes something closer to $50,000, sitting in your portfolio, working for you, building your financial independence quietly in the background. Instead, it's in a closet, depreciating, taking up space. And here's what the financially intelligent Americans have figured out. It's not about being a minimalist or rejecting comfort. It's about understanding the difference between consumption and investment. Experiences appreciate in your memory. Relationships compound over time. A dinner with people you love, a trip that changes how you see the world. These things grow in value the longer you hold them. Stuff does the opposite. It depreciates the moment it leaves the store. And the really uncomfortable truth, a lot of the stuff we buy isn't even for us. It's for the perception of others, which brings us right back to the identity trap and the Joneses and the whole cycle feeding itself. The exit from that cycle is simple. Start spending on things that actually matter to you, not to anyone watching.
Now here's where it gets really interesting, and most people never think about it this way. Every single one of us is managing 3 accounts simultaneously, not just money, time, health, and money. And the tragic mistake is treating them as if they're separate. They're not. They are deeply, brutally connected, and the balance in each one shifts dramatically depending on where you are in life. When you're in your 20s and 30s, you have an abundance of time. You have an abundance of health, but money is tight. So it makes complete sense to trade some of your time, trade some of your health to build your financial foundation. Late nights, early mornings, the grind. At that stage, that's not a mistake. That's a rational capital allocation decision. The return on that investment over a 20 or 30-year period is enormous. But here's where Americans go wrong. They never adjust the formula. They keep making the same trade long after it's stopped making sense, sacrificing health for money when they already have enough money, sacrificing time for wealth preservation
when time is now the scarcer resource, running the same operating system on completely different life circumstances. And the cost of that miscalculation isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in knees that don't work anymore, in relationships that quietly dissolved while you were optimizing your portfolio, in decades of deferred living that nobody ever handed back. Here's the honest financial truth. A person with $2 million in assets and deteriorating health is not wealthy. They are rich on paper and bankrupt where it actually counts. The financially intelligent Americans recalibrate this equation regularly. They ask themselves honestly, which account is running low right now, and they allocate accordingly. Because protecting your health isn't a lifestyle choice, it's a wealth preservation strategy. Because protecting your time isn't laziness, it's recognizing that time is the only asset that cannot be earned back, cannot be borrowed, and cannot be compounded, not even with the best financial advisor on the planet. The goal was never just to accumulate money. The goal was always a life worth living, and that requires all three accounts to be managed with intention.
Here's the final one. And in many ways, it's the most important. Because everything we've talked about so far, the identity trap, the Joneses, the stuff, the three accounts, it all leads here. At some point, you have to make the hardest financial switch most Americans are completely unprepared for. You have to stop being a saver and start being a spender. Now, before that sentence triggers every instinct in your body, just stay with this, because this isn't about being reckless. This isn't about blowing your retirement fund on things that don't matter. This is about something far more important. This is about the entire point of everything you sacrificed for. See, most Americans spend decades building financial discipline, cutting back, saving aggressively, maxing out contributions, watching every dollar. And that discipline is admirable. It is absolutely necessary. But here's what nobody tells you. That same discipline, if left unchecked, becomes a prison. There are people sitting on $400,000, $600,000, even over $1 million in savings who still feel guilty ordering the slightly more expensive thing on the menu, who still hesitate to book the trip they've been talking about for years, who still default to sacrifice long after the season of sacrifice was over. And that is not financial intelligence. That is financial trauma disguised as responsibility. The money was always meant to be deployed, not hoarded, not admired from a distance, deployed into experiences that matter, into relationships that need your presence and your resources, into your health before your health starts sending you invoices. And here's the practical truth. Transitioning from saver to intentional spender is a skill, just like saving was a skill. It has to be practiced. It has to be built deliberately before the moment arrives, because if you wait until retirement to figure it out, you won't just flip a switch. The habits are too deep. The guilt is too ingrained. Start now. Spend intentionally on things that genuinely matter to you, not to perform, not to impress, but because the whole point of wealth was never the number in the account. It was always the life that number was supposed to fund. Most people figure that out in 62 years. You just figured it out today. If this hit differently than what you usually hear, drop a comment below and tell me which one of these hit closest to home. And if you know someone who needs to hear this right now, send it to them. It might be the most valuable thing you share with them all year.